Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition, and we now turn to poem 642, Me from Myself to Banish. You'll maybe remember in our study of poem 288, I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Remember, don't tell, they'd advertise. One variant of that word advertise was in fact this word banish, used in 8 of her poems. Think about it. Emily, or if you want to call her a recluse, that is to say somebody who banished herself from society, will now speak about this idea of banishment. In many ways we are back to poem 458 in the divided self, also 532. In this poem, Emily will be engaging in what one scholar has called self-enmity, this struggle between the me of this poem, Emily, and the myself of the poem, her soul or consciousness. And there's this tension that exists that is going to take us all the way back to our early study of Greek thought, and of course Plato and the Republic, as well as Aristotelian thinking. That notion that we are engaged constantly in a dialogue with ourselves where we're trying to figure stuff out. One of the reasons that I called our series Chats with Emily is a poem just like this one. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hoping that you work through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 641 poems. We just finished with 641, size circumscribes, and you'll be aware of this comparative way of working that Emily is always playing with. I want to just hear what Sharon Leiter, the great Emily scholar, had to say about this poem in particular. Quote, Dickinson's poetry was a continual, amazingly varied assault on the mysteries of the inner life, an attempt to grasp its workings through language. Soul, self, spirit, brain, mind, consciousness, heart, me, all were variant terms she used to designate the mystery of the quintessential self. The word soul, or souls, appears 141 times in the poems. She addressed, defined, relied on, and exulted in her soul, gambled with it, bought it with a white heat, and saw it scalped naked. She took the precise measure and weight of her brain and held funerals in it. So vast to her was the terrain of inner life that she counseled the explorer Hernando de Soto, explore thyself, and assured him that he would only then find the undiscovered continent. Now, in many ways, again, we are back to the ancient Greek idea. You remember in Greek tragedy, guys, when we talked about the agnon, the conflict between two morally equal forces. And many will say this is the most Whitman-esque of Emily's poems. You'll remember from Song of Myself, Passage 5, we gave full lectures on all the poems of Leaves of Grass, and we call that series Talks with Walt. That ability to discuss or converse with the soul back and forth, I think you'll see some of that in this as well. By the way, in a letter to Higginson, Emily said that the I of her poems not necessarily was herself, but a supposed person. Now, when we play the game here, we'll try to understand the tension between Emily and her supposed person. She says it this way, Me from myself to banish, had I art, impregnable my fortress unto all heart. But since myself assault me, how have I peace, except by subjugating consciousness? And since we're mutual monarch, how this be, except by abdication? Me of me. Now, I want to point out that this is a poem, almost like a syllogism, but notice, constructed almost like a syllogism, but notice the two questions that will centralize kind of the argument, the tension of this poem. First of all, there is the challenge. How do you separate yourself from yourself, right? We have commented on this before ontologically, and of course psychologically, that we can be aware of our own thinking, and yet who is doing the thinking if not ourself, our mind? And therefore, what is it that somehow stands adjacent or outside of the mind to be aware that it is in fact working itself? It's one of the age-old questions, and of course we follow this to ground in any number of studies. Notice it is me from myself to banish. It's almost like she's saying, I'd like to be able to do this, but how does one do that? How do you step out of your own head? Emily, who spent so much time alone, so much time with herself, Emily, the great poet of psychology, says, had I art, impregnable my force. Now, impregnable gets used in 8 of her poems. The marginal note actually for unto all heart was to forgive, to foreign heart, was actually the other variant, and she stuck with unto all heart. In other words, her soul is like a fortress. How do you assail it? And then she says, but since, and she uses that phrasing now for the next 2 questions, but since myself assault me, how have I peace except by subjugating consciousness? Now, when we get to poem 822, we'll come back to this poem and her playing around with this word of consciousness. And this is how she says it in 822. This consciousness that is aware of neighbors and the sun will be the one aware of death, and that itself alone is transversing the interval experience between and most profound experiment appointed unto men. How adequate unto itself its property shall be, itself unto itself, and none shall make discovery. Adventure most unto itself the soul condemned to be, attended by a single hound, its own identity. Again, Emily's brilliant in this regard. She's constantly delving into the inner psyche and asking, how do you get away from yourself? Maybe it will be the questions that you fear that you're asking. She finishes, since she, her soul, and herself are mutual monarchs, they both reign. How this be except by abdication, me of myself? Well, in other words, she says, how does one escape oneself? Because everywhere you go, there you are, as the famous saying goes. Now, Weisbrock's, this scholar, has made an observation that I think we should share with you to say, quote, this is a poet, about Emily, this is a poet who will not stop thinking. One final meaning of the dash seems to be its implication that any thought is liable to be continued. To expect settled truth from Dickinson is to wish for a contradiction in terms, end quote. I find that a remarkable gloss on this very poem. I think her argument is that there's always some kind of tension between the artist and the creative self. And to be, the language of anguish has often been referenced here as being an exemplar of what it is to really be a thinker, to try and grapple with the fact that A, I am thinking, but B, I can be aware that I'm thinking of my thoughts. And therefore, it seems to be a certain strange dualism at play. What is going on with that? Now, when we get to poem 683, we're going to come back to this poem a number of times. When we get to poem 683, she'll say it this way: the soul unto itself is an imperial friend, or the most agonizing spy an enemy could send. Secure against its own, no treason can fear. Itself, it's sovereign of itself. The soul should stand in awe. Notice here it's sovereign, and in our poem of 642, it's monarch. When we get to poem 753, again, we'll come back to this study one more time. My soul accused me, and I quailed, as tongues of diamond have reviled. All else accused me, and I smiled. My soul that morning was my friend. Her favor is the best disdain toward artifice of time or men, but a disdain toward lighter bear, a finger of enameled fire. And then finally, when we get to poem 1323, we'll come back one more time to this poem. She says it this way: I never hear that one is dead without the chance of life afresh annihilating me, that mightiest belief, too mighty for the daily mind, that trilling its abyss had madness had it once or twice, the yawning consciousness. Beliefs are bandaged like the tongue when terror were told. In any tone commensurate would strike us instant dead. I do not know the man so bold he dare in lonely place that awful stranger consciousness deliberately face. And I think this is the point. This is exactly what Emily is doing. And at 3A, I can't help but think of Walt Whitman playing a very similar game, Song of Myself. And what is it that both Whitman and Emily have in common? Their study of Emerson. And I think that makes some sense. The Oversoul, of course, his essay Nature as well. Finally, at 3B, what was a time when you felt at war with yourself? And how did you reconcile the two? Thank you.